So
started,
you can say, yes, I'm eating this bucket of ice cream, and I realize I'm eating this
and I
bucket of
know
ice
it,
cream, and I know it.
and
But
I know
tomorrow I'll
why.
make a different choice, okay? So don't bug me. Tomorrow I'll make a healthy choice. But right now, I'm eating this
Right
bucket of ice.
now, I'm all good because, yep, I don't have it in.
Well, welcome to this episode of Love My Body, Love Myself. I'm your host, Alicia Couri, and today we have the amazing Michele Mariscal. She is an author, she is a coach, and today our topic is on grief and how we can have self-compassion while grieving. So, Michele, can you share, because there's this myth that we only experience grief when we've had a loss of a loved one, but there's so many other ways or so many other things that can happen in our lives that cause us to have grief. Can you share some of those things? And you can introduce yourself a little bit too before you share that, just so the audience knows who you are.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. So I am Michele Mariscal, and I've been doing this work in grief recovery for the past 8 years. And a part of why I'm doing this work leads into the answer of this question. And my background is I come out of the workplace training and development. And so I was at a very high level in my career, and there were back to back things with grief that were happening, and they were different kinds of losses. So
Mm,
I'll just move into that. I was, I had always been a lifelong athlete, and my physicality seemed to be suddenly failing me.
mm,
My health was in a state where I just could not push myself anymore. So we often don't think of things like that because that's a true loss of identity. And
mhm.
when you really rely on having a way of being that can help you through stress, that can help you with your mental and emotional status, and suddenly you're not able to do that, there's a loss of identity around that, not to mention just the physical ability losses. So very often when I meet with people, a health challenge that has either profoundly affected them for a period of time or a life event that has completely then permanently changed their life. And those are areas of loss that we can explore. But it's
Mhm.
also around when we just look to what so many have been through in the past year through natural disasters, loss of property. But what that brings on the intangible level is a loss of security, a loss of trust. If I know in my area, I'm in a very hard hit hurricane area that is still and
Yeah.
really just beginning to recover. So you can look at all those feelings of uncertainty, fear of the unknown. Those are really losses. It's kind of this loss of stability in my
Yeah.
thinking, even.
Security,
Mhm.
stability. So
Right.
really you can experience grief through any kind of loss that you've experienced. It does not have to be the loss of a loved one. It can be any loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of even if someone breaks into your place, that's your loss of security. Now you feel vulnerable, and whether they took something or not, you've just lost that security, that your home is supposed to be your sanctuary and now it's been violated. So any kind of a thing like that. So we can look at grief recovery now, not from just one kind of this one lane. We can look at grief recovery from multiple areas. And so many people suffer in silence, having lost something and not really recognizing it as going through a grieving process.
Mhm. And I'll give you a very common one. We're not in that time of year, but it's very common that moms and dads don't recognize their own grieving that is happening when their kids go off to college.
Yeah, that
Just a
empty nest syndrome.
change. Yes, that so you can see that identity. So one of the definitions that I think is really helpful in grief is that grief is the conflicting feelings brought on from any change in routine or behavior. So with that example, you've been used to this kid being around, and there might have been some great times and there might have been some really annoying times, and all of this love and identity that has been poured into this child.
Hmm.
That's a shift. That's a
It's shifted.
transition.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
You don't have school pickups and drop-offs and all the things that your life kind of revolved around has now
Yeah.
changed. And it's like, now what do I do with myself? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I have so much extra time now. Not
Yeah.
really, but I
And
I didn't find
and
that I had extra time once my kids left.
oh, it gets filled.
It was
And
filled very quickly.
I think one of the most important things too in that definition that can also be related to when we do have a loss of a loved one, whether that's to death or divorce or breakup of an intimate relationship, is that word conflicting feelings. Because sometimes maybe there is if you've been a caregiver for a long time, there's a sense of relief, and then you may feel guilt. So we really want to normalize all that and just see that our emotions can really take a lot of different movements that,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Now, through grief, a lot of times, and let's just use the common, you've lost someone, whether it's, like you said, through a divorce, through a broken relationship, or someone passing.
Mhm.
And a lot of times in relationships, you see the stereotypical, bucket of ice cream, which I never understood because I never go to sweets. Or they start working out and they just become obsessed about, like there's some kind of compulsive behavior that accompanies that process. Where does that come from? That compulsive behavior to do something either destructive or like you just go overboard in the other direction.
Yeah, that when we think about all of those challenging emotions that are a part of what we're experiencing, most of us wouldn't willingly choose that. Most of us, it's kind of normal to try and avoid those really uncomfortable feelings. It's not the healthy thing to do, and yet we can understand why one might not want to just fall into this surrender to, oh man, this is really, really hard. And let's just go and
Hmm.
experience them all. We're not enculturated to do that. There are cultures that support grief very well. So part of it's cultural from our families, possibly spiritual communities, possibly the greater community. There's a lot of different ways that we might have learned to dismiss
Mm.
particular emotions. And so in the work that I do with people, we call them STIRBs, short-term energy relieving behaviors. And that does refer to anything that we do, as you said, obsessively to an excess to avoid working with and moving with those painful feelings.
Mm. So they're seeking comfort, whatever their beliefs around what comfort is. So if you grow up
Yeah.
eating, then food is comfort, or
Mhm.
exercising obsessively is that's where you're avoiding the feelings and you're finding comfort in that. And so how can we or how can someone actively and consciously choose something that is healthy behavior that actually gives that self-compassion versus defaulting to these maybe destructive or maybe just you're pushing your feelings away and you're doing something that might not be so loving to yourself.
Yeah. There's different facets of that. I think the first and most loving thing to do is recognize and be an awareness of when we're doing that activity or when we're choosing to do this other thing, and just be gentle with ourselves. And because awareness really is the first piece, is it, I there's a difference between just bulldozing through an activity. For some it's gambling, for some it's just being online hours and hours and hours, others it's shopping, whatever it is. That first step is to recognize and acknowledge for ourselves, yes, I'm doing this. And for right now, I'm choosing it. That's just the first little step. And that's a step in the right direction, because I think we're so hard on ourselves most of the time. So just
So
starting,
you can say, yes, I'm eating this bucket of ice cream, and I realize I'm eating this
and I
bucket
know
of ice
it,
cream, and I know it.
and
But
I know
tomorrow I'll
why.
make a different choice, okay? So don't bug me. Tomorrow I'll make a healthy choice. But right now, I'm eating this
Right
bucket of ice
now, I'm all good because, yep, I don't have it in me right now to.
cream.
And the more that we do that, that it can begin to change for us. There is a point where the choice becomes something else on another day, perhaps. And here's where I want to describe the other facet of what we might want to work with. So over here, we're learning to be self-compassionate and aware. And over here on the other side, we can start looking at, okay, if I was actually going to do something different, what would support me in that? And just jot, if ideas come to you, like, well, if I knew I had a friend that I was going to go, for instance, I live by a bunch of water and marinas right out there that I can see. If I knew I was going to go walk by the marina, the park, the whatever it is, walk our dogs together, that would be helpful. So we start to just see how we can support ourselves, and then little by little, maybe start taking action and making it safe for ourselves to feel some of what we're feeling, to share some of what we're feeling. Maybe we decide to watch a YouTube on, I keep hearing people talk about journaling. What's that journaling thing? I've never journaled in my life. We might take an action to just go watch a 5-minute YouTube. Like, if I were to talk about my feelings, how might I do that? So you can see how just little baby steps toward movement in the other direction. So we're not eating the quart of ice cream.
Right. That's good because we have to honor our feelings, but also we can't just do everything all at once. And before we actually started, we went live in our little pre-show talk. I mentioned James Clear, and he says that we, as humans, we try to optimize a habit before we even create the habit. And so it's about taking those, and that's in his book, Atomic Habits. It's about taking those small little steps, and then once we've developed that habit, then we can optimize it. So it's just like you're saying, honor those small little things and build awareness around it. So you're aware that you're doing it and you're not just blindly doing it. And then you make little incremental changes as you move forward and learn to have self compassion and self love. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to this episode of Love My Body, Love Myself. I'm your host, Alicia Couri, and today we have author Michele Mariscal, and her book is Growing Through Grief. And we're talking about self compassion, how to have self compassion and self love while experiencing loss. And it can be any kind of loss. Michele, I want to ask if you can walk us through, because you work, you coach women, you coach people through this process of grief, if you can walk us through kind of how someone can recognize when their grieving is no longer healthy and they should seek help from a professional like you, and how you can help them kind of overcome some of the deeper, darker feelings that they're experiencing, if you're able to do that for us.
Sure. Yeah. And it really is just continuing to observe how it is in your days that you're dealing or not dealing with the reality of what has happened. And what I mean by that is grief in itself can be isolating. And what we want to be careful of is when we have become so withdrawn and so isolated that we can sort of, that moves us down into a darkness that might be very, very challenging to come out of if we're not allowing friends to help us with tasks or visit. Or now it's not anything out of the realm of normal to not feel like going out of the house. So it's, I mean, that's absolutely normal for people. And there may be a time of just this highly sensitive, vulnerable feeling time,
Mhm.
but it's different if we're just letting ourselves kind of sink deeper and deeper into a dark hole and
Right, and not letting anybody in.
not letting
Because
anybody
everybody
in.
grieves differently. We all have
Yeah,
different ways of grieving. And
yeah.
so something that may take me a week, 2 weeks to get over, someone might it might take them 6 months. But it's that where you're isolating yourself and you're really not letting people help you or even talk to you about it. And you're just like you keep that hypersensitivity for long, long periods of time. Is
Well,
that
it can grow and just become kind of
all
this
consuming?
all-encompassing.
Right.
Yeah, and
Then you,
that's really when you want to be able to pay attention, because in truth, yes, you do need to feel the feelings and have the experiences of what you're going through. But the operative word I always say about emotions, emotions are movement. Emotions move in our body. In fact, there's this great work out of UCLA, Matthew Lieberman, who spoke about even just naming the emotions that you're
mhm.
experiencing. This is where journaling comes in handy. It begins to move the activity of our brain from the amygdala. The amygdala is a place in our brain that houses a lot of different patterns. Some of them might be good, but it houses all of those patterns of fear and anything bad or challenging that has ever happened to us. And if we're not working with and moving with and talking about and expressing in some way those emotions, we're not getting the brain signals to move forward to our, excuse me, to our frontal cortex, excuse me, where we do decision making.
Mm,
So,
right.
so another thing we might notice about ourselves is that, and this is when you may realize you might need to reach out for help. The simplest decisions take you down, like trying to decide what you're gonna have for dinner. Am I gonna have chili or a salmon? I don't know. That's too hard of a decision to make. Like this just
Mhm.
overwhelming mental fatigue. Again, that's normal as a part of the grieving process. But when it becomes all encompassing, that's when we need to pay attention and recognize that we need some tools to help us safely move through those emotions.
Wow. Yeah. That's really important to identify that. Thank you for sharing that. So there are physiological changes that happen in our brains through that process when we experience that loss. And it's really, if you have people around you that can say, hey, I think you might need to speak to someone about this. I would say be open to hearing that. Be
Yeah.
open to hearing that
Yeah.
because your friends and your family love you and care about you, and they want to see you heal. And it's not dishonoring to, if you've lost someone, it's not dishonoring to them for you to heal. I
Yeah.
also see people, they don't want to let go because they feel like that's when they let go of that person as well. Have you seen that?
Yes, that is one of the most common things that I hear in the work that I do together with people is that there is a fear of they and unfortunately this term move on has been used so much that it does have that feeling. And that's not what we're doing at all. We're moving forward in our life, but that relationship will always be intact. We will
Mhm.
always have our person. The
Yeah.
relationship has changed because it's no longer in the physical world, but all of that emotional, mental, spiritual part of who they were and who we were together is always intact. It's that well, and this was a part of this goes back to my introduction. Why I sought out new tools because I have a history of being a hands-on spiritual healer. I have great intellectual capacity and understanding of processes and psychology. None of it was helping me. None of it.
Mm.
And what I realized is, oh, I'm in my head with this. I kind of gotten stuck in my head feeling like I'm trying to solve this problem from my mental level. And I really don't want to feel because I had had two back-to-back losses of people in my life,
Mm.
and then the whole physicality part that was plaguing me. And so that was a time when I realized, oh, yes, something new that's going to help me take what I'm having as thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts, bring it down to my heart and actually express what are all the fears and definitely with those two people, like, oh my God, two more people that I'm saying goodbye to, and they're just not in my life. So anyway, back
Hmm.
to the question. I hear that all the time that they're
Yeah.
afraid to do the work because they they either they feel like, well, if I let them go and I become happy in my life, then there's a sense of guilt. So we have to work with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that conflicting emotions. You can see how grief can bring up so many conflicting emotions in us that if we have this way of being able to just process all the way through anything that might be feeling like a hope or a dream or an expectation that will not happen because
Hmm.
our person is gone. Sometimes what we're working through are regrets. So other categories that I work with are things that we might have wanted to have been different or better, or things that we just would want to have more of. So
Hmm.
all those different categories can be a part of what we're trying to work through. And if it's a less than, I call them less than loved ones in our life, even though there may be some level of, eh, they're gone. There is still a great, I find with people who come to me to work through less than loved ones in their life, what is really plaguing them is this inability to forgive. And that
Mm.
can be extremely challenging and kind of keep this level of anger that
Yeah.
is affecting their health and everything else in their life. Maybe creating loving relationships because of this inability to forgive. And how we work with it in the work I do, forgiveness is giving up the hope for a different or better yesterday. Forgiveness is learning how to give up the hope for a different or better yesterday. And when we're able to do that successfully, it
Wow.
frees us. Yeah, it frees us in
Yeah.
a way that we can love ourselves and we can love another more truly.
Wow. Michelle, I could talk to you forever. This is so amazing. Thank you. How, if someone is experiencing this now or they know someone who is, how can they reach you, even if it's to get your book or find out how your services work? Give us an how to reach you.
Sure. My website is the word energy and M all mashed together, .org, energym.org. And I'm out on LinkedIn pretty regularly. You can search me there. The book is out on Amazon, Growing Through Grief. And people have told me that, reading the book, the thing I've heard most from people is that they gained a sense of hope. And
Mhm.
that when I work with people, that's really what I want to impart most, that they're even in this deep darkness that we might be feeling, there is hope.
That
And
light.
every little
Yeah.
baby step is an act of love in taking care of yourself. So maybe
Wow.
just reading the book, that's your act of love, or reaching out to a friend today and saying, I just need to cry. Can you just
Yeah.
be with me and hug me while I cry?
Yeah.
That's an act of love. Mhm.
Oh, whew, gave me chills. As we close, because it's really powerful because people need tools, they need resources, they need to understand that, especially when they're experiencing loss and grief, that there is help out there and not to suffer in silence. And this show is Love My Body, Love Myself. We want you to grow in self-love through the process, not neglect your own self-care, self-love, as sometimes we do, even when we're caring for someone else, that we neglect ourselves. In closing, I want to ask you, what are your favorite ways to care for yourself, for your body, and to love yourself?
My favorite way, you've already heard me allude to one. I live near water on
Mhm.
purpose. So walking around in the water on the beach, that, and I think it's because water kind of just has this rhythm. And in the esoteric world, emotions are mapped to water. So anything to do with water, just being around it, in it, and just really one of the things that I commit to each day, even dark days, is just finding a moment of wonder. There's always something that is
Wow.
miraculous if we look out in the world. Albert Einstein said that. He said, you can either live your life as if nothing is a miracle, or you can live your life as if everything
Everything is a
is a
miracle.
miracle.
Mhm.
And especially in our dark days, I think that is so helpful to just go find the tiniest little flower and wonder at that.
Wow. Thank you. That is amazing. Thank you for that. And please go look for Michelle. Find her book on Amazon. It's going to be well worth your while. You may not need it at this moment, but there might be a time that you need this as a resource. So thank you, Michelle, for being our guest, for joining us today.
Thank
And
you.
I thank you for watching. And just remember every day to do something that proves to yourself that you're loving your body and that you're loving yourself. I'm Alicia Couri, and I'll see you on another episode of Love My Body, Love Myself. Bye for now. Turnover. It's incredibly expensive for any organization, but especially those that are small and mid-size. If you're an organization and you're hiring, it's so important to get it right. You need to identify the right people for the right roles. Here at Audacious Concepts Inc., we help you perfect your hiring process so you get it right every single time. Reach out to us at audaciousconceptsinc.com